Okay, so with the content that I make, I talk to Christians a lot. A lot. And there is one specific thing that happens sometimes when having conversations with Christians about different topics, whether it's debating or just having a conversation. I feel like more times than not, I'm just having a simple conversation. But I came across a video earlier this week, and the Christian responding to an atheist was doing the thing that I'm going to talk about, which I think is basically a Christian version of throwing ad hominems out. And it's been hard for me to articulate what it is exactly that they're doing and why it's so frustrating. So let's watch the video together and then we're going to talk about it.
And even if I found irrefutable proof that God was real, I still would not worship a man that would forgive a rapist and let him in heaven for being a Christian, but then damn someone to burn in hell for eternity for simply not believing. Oh my God, who said that? Me.
Yeah, I mean, she said it. Your lack of submission to God is not a matter of intellect, it's a matter of the will.
Pause. So already this person is saying, guys, it's not actually about them being intellectually honest, it's about will. But the person in the first video that she's responding to said two separate things. Number one, they aren't convinced of God. And number two, they are talking about a hypothetical scenario where if they were convinced God was real, then they wouldn't worship him. And then they gave a reason as to why. This person responding to her is conflating the two. She's saying, see, it's not because they actually don't believe, it's because they don't want to believe. But she's totally ignoring the fact that those two things are separate, and it's very clear they are separate. One is a hypothetical, and one is actually the case that they're not convinced. She is conflating disbelief and disobedience, which I see Christians do a lot, to kind of help their case, which in my opinion doesn't help it at all.
1 Corinthians 2:19, the natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him. And this is true of all of us. Before Christ, we were enemies to Christ, and we were alienated and hostile in mind.
And this is where the ad hominem stuff comes in. That's really extremely frustrating. So she's already saying, I feel like she's saying it in a way that sounds better than what she actually means. And I get why they do that. But she's saying, guys, before we became Christian, we were actually the enemy of God. So she is calling the first girl the enemy of God. Any atheist, anybody who doesn't believe. It's interesting that instead of addressing anything this person even said in the first place, she goes directly to, they are the enemy. I would argue that creates a hostile environment. She's calling the first girl hostile because the girl doesn't agree with the God that she worships or why you would worship him in the first place. And so to combat that, the Christian who's responding says, well, they're basically the enemy of Christ. In my opinion, ironically, that creates a hostile environment of, it's not about us disagreeing anymore. It's actually, you're hostile and you're the enemy of God. To me, that is the hostility right there, because it's no longer we have different opinions, we have different beliefs. It's you are the enemy, which is a type of system that Christianity creates. It's not like we can just have a disagreement. It's we are enemies. It's good versus evil, and that's what Christianity always does.
And before we were reconciled to Christ, we didn't need more proof, but we needed a regenerated heart.
So she is essentially saying that people who say they actually need more proof to be convinced God is real, they're lying. They're liars. It's actually a heart issue. These people are hostile and their heart is corrupt in some way. And again, to me, this stuff is kind of frustrating because it is sprinkled with flowery language that doesn't sound as straightforward as regular ad hominems do. But it is, in fact, an ad hominem. It's not about, again, she's not addressing anything the first person said. The atheist said, not addressing it at all. And instead saying they don't actually care about truth. It's not that they're not convinced. It's that they have a corrupted heart, or they're hostile, or however you want to name it. To me, that is the exact same as going into a debate or a conversation and ignoring all of the points that the person is making, and instead saying you're a bad person. That's her entire argument, is your heart isn't in the right place, you're not a good intentioned person, therefore, whatever. That is so incredibly frustrating to watch. And I want to say, when I make these videos talking about this kind of thing, this isn't about the individual. It isn't about, I'm not watching this video looking at this Christian and being like, oh my gosh, you're such a horrible person. You're so this, that, or the other. This is much part of a much bigger picture within Christianity. This happens all the time. This is something she has also learned through interacting with other Christians and through her theology. She didn't just make this up herself. This is a bigger problem, a systemic problem of, let's make someone the enemy. And typically when you do that, when you make someone the enemy or claim they're hostile or have a corrupted heart, whatever it might be, then you don't have to address the actual statements. You don't have to address the substance of the argument the person was making in the first place, because that can be hard, right? I mean, the entire question was, not question, but the entire statement was, I wouldn't worship him because he values, his validation over somebody hurting somebody else. He would let a rapist into heaven over somebody who simply doesn't believe. That's a hard thing for a lot of Christians to address because, yeah, that's crazy. That sounds crazy, right? To allow a rapist into heaven just because they gave you validation, but someone who maybe was even the victim of that rapist, they burn in hell because they didn't believe in the right thing. They didn't give God validation. So instead of addressing any of that, it's easier to be like, this person actually doesn't accept that morality system because they're hostile and corrupt and their heart isn't in the right place. Their heart isn't in the right place because they're having a hard time understanding why God would allow a rapist into heaven versus somebody who just doesn't believe in him. It's frustrating. And, there are times where I want to say it's dishonest, but they could actually believe what they're saying. This idea that they're just the enemy and they just have a bad heart, and that's why they would question this type of morality that's obviously all over the place, that obviously doesn't seem just because it's not. But this is indeed the same exact thing as just going into a conversation or debate and throwing a bunch of ad hominems. It's just the Christian version or Christian style of doing so that, again, is oftentimes wrapped in a flowery kind of language. And the flowery language, I think, is the part that makes me most frustrated, because I see Christians do this a lot, where they'll say something that's at the core of it not nice, at the core of it hateful, or whatever you want to call it, but they'll say it in a way where they're like, well, I mean, we're all sinners, because, they do that thing where, she did at the beginning where she's like, well, before Christ, we were all the enemies of God. So it sounds better than just coming out and saying, this person's the enemy of God in our religion, because you can say, well, that was all of us at one point. So it sounds better. Anyways, let's finish the video.
This is entirely the work of God, like it says in Ezekiel, that he takes the heart of stone and he gives us a heart of flesh. And apart from that work of grace, we do not naturally see Christ as worthy of our worship, but we resist. And thankfully, his worship is not dependent on our willingness to worship him. And scripture tells us that one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And so it's not a matter of if we will bow and if he will be acknowledged, but whether we will bow willingly out of repentance and faith by the grace of God, or whether we will bow when there is no more opportunity for mercy.
So to me, the end sounds like, hey, you better give it up because my God's a giant bully and he'll make you bow eventually. I don't know. What a good guy. Like, what a good God. But yeah, anyways, that's what I wanted to say on the topic. It's really frustrating to see, because I know that when I've had those interactions and I've had people respond to my videos that way, it's frustrating because obviously, number one, they didn't address what the substance of what I was saying was. And number two, it just feels like they're attacking your character and who you are as a person. And I think it's kind of important to, when you're having discussions around religion specifically, you're focusing on the whole thing. You're focusing on things in general. And I just think chalking it up to basically someone isn't a good person is lazy. And I think it's kind of shitty. But that's also why I try to remember that with my own audience and my own community. And that's often why I get kind of in back and forth with people or delete comments that just say something simple like, people are religious because they're stupid. Or people are religious because they're uneducated. That is, first of all, it's simplifying stuff too much. And I'm not saying education has nothing to do with anything, but it's much more productive to actually talk about the substance of the conversation we're having, and instead of just essentially throwing ad hominems at people and not caring about the conversation at hand, which I think we should be caring about. And I think we should do it as good faith as possible. Am I going to say I'm perfect at it? No. Am I going to say I never mess up? No, but I'm saying that's what I try to do. So I think I would love if, in the future, Christians could learn that even if they're saying their ad hominem attacks in a nice Christianly way, it's still ad hominem attack, and you're still just insulting people instead of addressing the argument. So, yeah, that's all I want to say. I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you're taking care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.